The crystal forests of Lumeria sang their ancient song as Thuron Vale moved silently between the towering structures, his silver-touched skin reflecting the ethereal light that pulsed through the translucent pillars. As a guardian of the seventh grove, he had spent centuries listening to the harmonic whispers of his world, but today something was different. A discordant note threaded through the symphony, setting his nerves on edge. He pressed his palm against the nearest crystal spire, allowing his consciousness to merge with the living matrix that connected all things on Lumeria. The disturbance grew stronger, an alien presence moving through the sacred grounds of the inner sanctum, where no outsider had stepped foot in over a millennium. Miles away, Dr. Senna Blackwood adjusted the settings on her quantum resonance scanner, her heart racing with excitement. After 3 years of studying Lumerian energy signatures from the designated research zone, she had finally detected what she'd been searching for, a pattern that matched the ancient artifacts found in the ruins of Earth's first attempted colony on this world. "Recording log entry 47B, she whispered into her wrist computer. "The crystal formations appear to be more than simple geological structures. They're quantum computers, possibly the most sophisticated information storage system humanity has ever encountered." Senna brushed a strand of dark hair from her face, leaving a smudge of dirt across her cheek. The official research boundary lay half a kilometer behind her, but she couldn't turn back now. Not when she was so close to proving her theory about the true nature of Lumerian technology. The crystals around her hummed at a frequency just below human hearing, but she could feel the vibrations in her bones. Her scanner's readings were off the charts, suggesting an enormous amount of data flowing through the structures. If she was right, these crystals contained the accumulated knowledge of a civilization that had achieved technological advancement without destroying their natural world, the holy grail of human scientific pursuit. Thuron tracked the intruder's energy signature through the crystal matrix, his consciousness flowing from spire to spire. The presence felt curious, almost reverent, but that made it no less dangerous. Outsiders, especially humans, couldn't understand the delicate balance of Lumeria's living systems. Their very presence could disrupt patterns that had taken millennia to establish. As he drew closer, he caught glimpses of the intruder through the crystalline surfaces. A human female, her face illuminated by the glow of primitive scanning equipment. She moved with careful precision, documenting everything she saw. A researcher then, not a common trespasser, but that made her even more dangerous. Senna's scanner began picking up unusual variations in the crystal resonance. The patterns were shifting, becoming more complex, as if the system were actively responding to her presence. She held her breath, fingers flying across the holographic interface as she tried to record every detail. "The crystal matrix appears to be adaptive," she logged, struggling to keep her voice steady. "It's not just storing information, it's learning, analyzing, possibly even trying to communicate." The words had barely left her lips when a surge of energy pulsed through the nearest crystal spire. Her scanner screamed a warning as readings spiked off the scale. She reached out instinctively to steady herself against the crystal surface. Thuron emerged from the forest just in time to see the human woman touch the primary node of the inner sanctum's central archive. "No!" he shouted, but it was too late. The moment Senna's hand made contact with the crystal, the world exploded into light. Energy coursed through her body, and suddenly her mind was filled with impossible visions, vast libraries of knowledge stored in crystalline matrices, the deep songs of ancient guardians, the very pulse of Lumeria itself. Thuron felt the connections snap into place like a quantum lock engaging. The human's consciousness crashed into his through the crystal network, raw and chaotic and blazing with an intensity that threatened to overwhelm his carefully maintained mental barriers. They both collapsed to their knees, minds reeling from the forced convergence. Through the chaos, Thuron could feel her confusion, her wonder, her fear, all as clearly as if they were his own emotions. And he knew she could feel his shock, his anger, and beneath it all, a reluctant fascination with the brilliance of her scientific mind. What's happening?" Senna gasped, struggling to separate her thoughts from the flood of alien memories and sensations. "You've initiated a quantum neural bond," Thuron answered, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. Something that was never meant to exist between our species. The crystal forest sang around them, but now the song had changed. New harmonies wove through the ancient melody, binding their minds together in ways that defied the laws of both their sciences. As their consciousness continued to merge, one thought echoed clearly between them. Nothing in either of their worlds would ever be the same. Senna tried to pull away, but the connection held firm. I don't understand. My research never suggested anything like this was possible. Because it shouldn't be, Thuron replied, forcing himself to his feet. The crystal matrix serves as our repository of knowledge, yes, but it's also a living barrier, designed to prevent exactly this kind of interaction between our species. Through their shared awareness, Senna could feel the weight of responsibility crushing down on him. As a guardian, he was sworn to protect the secrets of Lumeria. But now those secrets were flowing freely between their minds, impossible to contain. The barrier, she whispered, understanding dawning through their connection. It's not just about protecting knowledge, is it? It's about preventing adaptation, evolution. Integration, Thuron finished, meeting her eyes. Our peoples were never meant to merge physically or mentally. The risks are too great. But even as he spoke, both could feel the bond strengthening, weaving their consciousness together more tightly with each passing moment. Fragments of memories flickered between them. Senna's childhood dreams of exploring alien worlds, Thuron's centuries of communion with the crystal forest, both of their lifelong searches for understanding. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the crystal formations. Through Thuron's knowledge, Senna recognized the rhythm, more guardians, drawn by the disturbance in the matrix. They cannot find you here, Thuron said urgently, helping her to her feet. The penalty for humans entering the inner sanctum is severe, and this bond, if they discover what's happened. He didn't need to finish the thought. Senna could feel his fear for her safety as clearly as her own racing heart. But how can I leave? I can barely tell which thoughts are mine. Focus on your own memory of the path you took here, Thuron instructed, sending calming energy through their connection. I'll try to shield your presence from the matrix until you're clear of the sacred grounds. Senna nodded, concentrating on retracing her steps. As she turned to go, a final thought passed between them, heavy with implications neither was ready to face. This goodbye was temporary. The bond poolsing between their minds would draw them together again, as inexorably as gravity itself. Go, Thuron whispered, both aloud and through their connection. But remember, everything you learned here, everything you felt. Keep it safe. The future of both our worlds may depend on understanding what's happened today. As Senna fled through the crystal forest, her mind still entangled with Thuron's, the ancient songs of Lumeria seemed to whisper of change, of transformation, of bridges built between stars. Neither of them could know yet whether this forbidden connection would prove to be salvation or destruction, but one thing was certain. Their isolated worlds would never be the same again. 3 days had passed since the incident in the inner sanctum, and Senna Blackwood couldn't stop hearing crystals singing in her dreams. She sat in her research station at the human settlement of New Haven, staring at data streams that now seemed laughably primitive compared to the knowledge flowing through her newfound connection with Thuron. Through their bond, she could sense him even now, his consciousness a steady presence at the edges of her mind. He was worried, moving through the crystal forests with increased vigilance as rumors of their encounter spread among the Lumerian guardians. Dr. Blackwood, a voice startled her from her reverie. Dr. Julian Reed, the settlement's chief administrator, stood in her doorway. The council is asking for your weekly report. They're particularly interested in any unusual readings from the crystal formations. Senna kept her expression neutral, though she felt Thuron's consciousness sharpen with attention. Nothing unexpected, Dr. Reed. The usual energy signatures, though I'm still working on decoding their significance. She felt a whisper of approval from Thuron at her careful answer. They had agreed, through their silent mental exchanges over the past days, that revealing their connection would be disastrous. The human authorities were just as likely as the Lumerian guardians to react with fear and hostility to such an unprecedented merger of minds. After Reed left, Senna closed her eyes, focusing on the bond. "They're getting suspicious," she projected, still amazed at how naturally this form of communication had become. "As are my people," Thuron's thoughts returned, tinged with concern. "But I've discovered something in the archives that you need to see. Can you reach the boundary of the research zone at sunset?" The request sent a thrill of both excitement and apprehension through her. "I'll be there." As twilight approached, Senna made her way to the permitted research area's edge, her official credentials displayed prominently in case any patrols spotted her. The crystal forests were especially beautiful at this hour, their structures refracting the dying sunlight into sheets of rainbow luminescence. Thuron was waiting in the shadows beyond the boundary markers, his tall form almost invisible among the crystal spires. Through their connection, Senna could feel his quiet joy at seeing her again, matched by an undercurrent of anxiety about what he had discovered. "Follow me," he said softly, leading her along a path that seemed to shift and change as they walked. "The crystals will hide our passage." They traveled deeper into the forest than Senna had ever been permitted, but not toward the inner sanctum this time. Instead, Thuron guided them to what appeared to be a natural grotto formed by overlapping crystal formations. "This is a forgotten archive," he explained, both aloud and through their thoughts. "One I found while searching for any record of bonds like ours. Look." He pressed his hand to a crystal surface, and Senna followed suit, their fingers almost touching. Immediately, their shared consciousness was flooded with images, ancient memories stored within the living matrix of the crystal forest. They saw other pairs like themselves throughout history, a Lumerian healer and a human explorer, centuries ago during the first contact between their species. A human scientist and a Lumerian scholar, their minds accidentally merged during an experiment. Each pair had found their consciousness unexpectedly linked, their beings drawn together by some fundamental force neither species fully understood. But what happened to them? Senna wondered, feeling Thuron's sadness before he answered. They were discovered, separated. The human members of each pair died soon after. Their minds couldn't survive the severing of the bond. The Lumerians, he hesitated. They went mad, chose to walk into the void rather than live disconnected from their bonded ones. A chill ran through both of them at this revelation. Through their link, each could feel the other's rising fear, not of the bond itself, but of losing it. "There's more," Thuron continued, guiding their shared consciousness deeper into the archived memories. "Each occurrence happened during periods of great change, when the balance between our worlds was shifting. The bonds weren't accidents. They were the crystal forest's attempt to bridge our species, to create understanding when conflict threatened." Senna's scientific mind raced with implications. "And now, what's changing that triggered our bond?" Before Thuron could answer, a new consciousness brushed against their shared awareness, another guardian approaching through the crystal matrix. But this presence felt different, darker somehow. "Jerk," Thuron whispered, his anxiety spiking through their connection. "He's suspected something since the disturbance in the inner sanctum. We need to—" "Well, well," a cold voice cut through the twilight. A tall figure stepped into the grotto, his silver skin darker than Thuron's, marked with lines of authority. "The rumors were true after all. You've bonded with one of them." Senna felt Thuron's protective surge as he stepped in front of her, but Jerk's twisted smile only grew. "Don't bother denying it. I can see the connection between you, a perversion of everything our people stand for." "The bond serves a purpose, Jerk," Thuron argued, his voice steady despite the turmoil Senna could feel through their link. "The archives show." "The archives show exactly why such abominations must be prevented," Jerk snapped. "You know what the council will say. The human will be executed, and you—" He gestured to the crystal formations around them. "You'll be sealed away until the bond kills you both." Everything happened at once. Jerk raised his hand, and the crystals around them began to pulse with dangerous energy. Thuron pushed Senna back, sending a desperate command through their connection. "Run." But Senna stood her ground, acting on instinct and their shared knowledge. She pressed her hand to the nearest crystal spire, and through their bond, she and Thuron combined their consciousness. Together, they reached into the living matrix of the forest. The crystals sang, not with Jerk's destructive command, but with their unified purpose. Light blazed through the grotto, and Jerk stumbled back, momentarily blinded. Now, their shared thoughts spurred them into action. They fled through the crystal forest, their movements perfectly synchronized through their mental link. Behind them, they could hear Jerk's shouts rising into the gathering darkness. They ran until they reached the boundary of the research zone, where they would have to separate to maintain their cover. Both knew that everything had changed. Their secret was out, at least to one who would use it against them. "The archives," Senna gasped, still catching her breath. "You never finished telling me what's changing now, what the forest is trying to prevent." Thuron's eyes met hers, grave with the weight of what he'd discovered. "The crystal forests are dying, Senna. Some kind of quantum decay is spreading through the matrix. If it isn't stopped, it will destroy both the Lumerian way of life and the human settlements that depend on crystal technology. Our bond." He touched her hand gently, sending a wave of complicated emotions through their connection. It might be the last chance to find a solution. As they parted ways, each heading back to their own people, their shared consciousness hummed with the revelation. They were not just two individuals caught in an accidental connection. They were part of something larger, a pattern repeated through history when both their worlds stood on the brink of transformation. The question now was whether they could survive long enough to understand their role in the changes to come. The quantum decay spreading through Lumeria's crystal forests had a sound. Through their shared consciousness, Senna and Thuron could hear it, a discordant note in the planet's ancient symphony, like glass slowly splintering under immense pressure. The knowledge haunted their every moment, even as they worked separately to maintain appearances. In her lab at New Haven, Senna analyzed readings that now meant something entirely different thanks to her bond with Thuron. The crystal deterioration wasn't just affecting Lumerian systems. It was beginning to impact human technology that relied on crystal-based power sources. "They're calling an emergency council meeting," she projected to Thuron through their link. "The power fluctuations are getting worse." The same is happening here. His thoughts returned, tinged with exhaustion. He'd been working tirelessly to shield their connection from Jerk's increasingly aggressive investigations. The Elder Council is gathering. Many blame human presence for the decay. Senna's hands trembled as she pulled up another dataset. What if they're right? What if our settlements are somehow asterisk? No, Thuron cut in firmly. The archives we found show the decay pattern started centuries ago, long before significant human presence. But we need proof. Their shared consciousness hummed with determination. Over the past weeks, they'd been secretly gathering data, combining Senna's scientific expertise with Thuron's deep understanding of the crystal matrix. But time was running out. "Dr. Blackwood." Senna looked up to find Dr. Reed in her doorway again, accompanied by a woman she didn't recognize. The stranger wore the insignia of Earth's Interstellar Scientific Council. "I'm Dr. Octavia Nash," the woman said, her sharp eyes taking in every detail of Senna's lab. "I'm here to investigate the recent anomalies in the crystal energy grid." Through their bond, Senna felt Thuron's immediate concern. They both recognized the name. Dr. Nash had been involved in aggressive crystal mining operations on other worlds, operations that had ended in ecological disaster. "Of course," Senna managed, keeping her voice steady. "I'd be happy to share my research." As she walked Nash through her official findings, carefully omitting anything related to her true understanding of the crystal matrix, Senna felt Thuron's consciousness shift suddenly, focusing on something urgent. The Elder Council chambers, his thoughts rushed to her. Jerk is speaking to them now. He's convinced them that severing all contact with humans is the only way to save the forests. They're voting to activate the ancient defense systems. Senna's heart raced. Through their shared knowledge, she understood what that meant. The crystal matrix could be used to generate a quantum barrier around Lumeria, one that would cut off all human settlements from their power sources. Thousands would die. "Dr. Blackwood," Nash's voice snapped her back to the moment. You seem distracted. Perhaps we should discuss your more unofficial research. The tone made Senna's blood run cold. Through their connection, she felt Thuron's warning. Nash's arrival wasn't a coincidence. Jerk had reached out to human authorities. I'm not sure what you mean, Senna said carefully. Nash's smile didn't reach her eyes. No. Then perhaps you'd like to explain these energy readings from the inner sanctum, the ones that match perfectly with your unauthorized excursion 3 weeks ago. Before Senna could respond, the lab's crystal-powered lights flickered ominously. Through their bond, she felt Thuron's panic. They're starting the defense protocol. His thoughts raced. I'm trying to slow them down, but... His consciousness suddenly flared with pain. Through their connection, Senna felt what was happening. Jerk and other guardians were restraining him, forcing him away from the Council's crystal controls. The lights flickered again, more violently. Nash's smile widened. Right on schedule, don't worry, Dr. Blackwood. Once the quantum barrier is established, your unfortunate condition will be cured. The separation may be unpleasant, but it's for the best. Senna's mind raced. She couldn't let them activate the barrier, couldn't let them separate her from Thuron. But more than that, she couldn't let them destroy any chance of saving both their peoples. Acting on desperate instinct, she slammed her hand onto the crystal interface of her lab computer. Through their bond, she felt Thuron do the same in the council chambers, fighting against his restraints to touch the nearest crystal surface. Their consciousness merged completely, flowing into the crystal matrix with unprecedented force. Together, they could see the entire network, could feel the decay eating through it like cosmic rust. But they could also see something else. Patterns in the deterioration, mathematical structures that hadn't been visible to either species working separately. The decay, their shared mind realized, it's not destruction, it's transformation. The crystal matrix is trying to evolve. Through their unified awareness, they began to understand. The crystal forest wasn't dying, it was attempting to adapt, to create a new form of quantum architecture that could serve both species. But the process was failing because it needs both perspectives, they thought as one. Human analytical science and Lumerian intuitive understanding. Apart, we're fighting the transformation. Together, asterisk. They poured their combined consciousness into the matrix, not fighting the decay but working with it, guiding it. Around them, the crystal forest song changed, incorporating new harmonies that bridged the gap between human and Lumerian understanding. In the lab, Nash stumbled back as the crystals began to pulse with new patterns of light. Through the windows, the forest itself seemed to shimmer and shift, its structure somehow both the same and fundamentally different. "What are you doing?" Nash demanded, but Senna barely heard her. All her focus was on maintaining the connection with Thuron, on helping the crystal matrix complete its evolutionary leap. In the council chambers, the Lumerian elders watched in astonishment as the decay patterns they'd feared suddenly resolved into new, more complex crystalline structures. The defense protocols flickered and died as the entire system transformed around them. When it was over, Senna sagged against her lab table, mentally exhausted but still feeling Thuron's presence stronger than ever. Through their bond, they shared the satisfaction of understanding. They hadn't just stopped the decay, they'd helped birth something new. But there will be consequences. Thuron's thoughts touched hers gently. What we've done, neither side will easily accept it. No, Senna agreed, watching Nash bark orders into her communicator while the crystals around them hummed with new potential. But they'll have to adapt, just like the forest did. As if in response, the crystal matrix sang with new harmonies, not just Lumerian songs or human rhythms, but something that contained and transcended both. Through their shared consciousness, Senna and Thuron felt the weight of what would come next. They had prevented an immediate catastrophe, but the real work of bringing their peoples together was just beginning. The transformed crystal forest glowed in the gathering dusk, its light neither entirely alien nor entirely familiar, much like the bond that now connected not just two minds, but two worlds on the brink of unprecedented change. Part 4, Symphony of Souls. The transformed crystal forest pulsed with new life, But Senna Blackwood had never felt more like a prisoner. For the past week, she'd been confined to a high-security research facility in New Haven, subjected to endless tests and interrogations. Only her bond with Thuron, burning bright despite attempts to dampen it, kept her from despair. "They're doing the same to me," his thoughts reached her, warm with reassurance despite his own confinement in the Lumerian citadel. But they can't understand what they're measuring. The transformation changed more than just the crystals. He was right. Every scan showed their neural patterns growing more intricate, neither fully human nor Lumerian. Dr. Nash had assembled a team of Earth's top xenobiologists to study Senna, all of them treating her like a lab specimen rather than a scientist. "The cellular changes are accelerating," Nash announced, reviewing the latest results. "Your DNA is showing signs of quantum entanglement at a molecular level. It's unprecedented." "The whole planet is showing signs of quantum entanglement," Senna replied evenly. Through her connection with Thuron, she could feel the truth of it. The transformed crystal matrix was affecting everything on Lumeria, slowly but inexorably breaking down the barriers between species. They found the prophecies, Thuron's thoughts suddenly interrupted, tinged with excitement. The ancient records we glimpsed in the Forgotten Archive. The High Scholar finally decrypted them fully. Senna's heart raced as Thuron shared the images through their bond. The prophecies weren't just predictions, they were instructions left by ancient Lumerians who had foreseen this transformation. The Crystal Forest's evolution wasn't random, it was part of a plan laid down millennia ago. "Dr. Nash," Senna said carefully, "I need to show you something." But before she could continue, alarms blared throughout the facility. Through their bond, Senna felt Thuron's warning merge with the facility's announcement. The transformed crystals were beginning to affect New Haven's containment systems. "The quantum cascade is spreading," Nash snapped, staring at rapidly changing readings. "The crystal matrix is trying to integrate with our technology just like it's integrating your biology, if we don't stop it." "If you try to stop it, you'll destroy everything," Senna interrupted. "This isn't an invasion or an accident. It's an evolution that both our species need to survive." Through their shared consciousness, she and Thuron could see the pattern unfolding across Lumeria. Human and Lumerian technology merging, creating hybrid systems that worked better than either alone. Just as their bond had grown stronger through acceptance rather than resistance, the planet itself was teaching them the power of synthesis over separation. As chaos erupted in the research facility, Senna felt a new presence touch their bond. Other minds were awakening to the possibility of connection. Humans and Lumerians across the planet finding their consciousness unexpectedly linked, just as she and Thuron had been. "It's happening," they thought together, just as the prophecies foretold. Not just a bridge between two people, but a bridge between worlds. The choice they'd made in transforming the crystal matrix had set in motion changes that could no longer be stopped. The only question now was whether their peoples would embrace the evolution or tear themselves apart trying to resist it. As the facility's crystal-powered systems fluctuated wildly around them, Senna met Nash's fearful gaze with calm certainty. "Help me reach the council," she said. "There's something they need to understand before it's too late." The symphony of transformation played on, its melody weaving together the fates of two species who had always been destined to become something more than the sum of their parts. Part 5, Stardust Promise. The great council chamber of New Haven buzzed with tension as humans and Lumerians sat together for the first time in centuries. Through their ever-strengthening bond, Senna and Thuron stood before both species leaders, their linked minds a living example of what Lumeria was becoming. "The prophecies speak of the great synthesis," Thuron explained, his voice carrying the weight of ancient knowledge. "Our ancestors knew this day would come, when the barriers between our peoples would dissolve, giving birth to something greater than either civilization could achieve alone. And we're simply supposed to accept this forced evolution," Dr. Nash demanded. "Watch humanity transform into what exactly?" "Not forced," Senna corrected, drawing on their shared understanding. "Invited. The new crystal matrix doesn't change anyone against their will. It only opens the possibility of connection, like a door that can be stepped through freely. Around the chamber, the transformed crystals sang with complex harmonies that even the human leaders could now begin to hear. In the weeks since the transformation had begun, dozens of human Lumerian pairs had discovered their own nascent bonds forming, each connection adding new layers to the planet's emerging consciousness. The physical changes in the bonded pairs are remarkable, admitted Dr. Reed, who had surprisingly become one of their strongest advocates after experiencing a connection of his own. Enhanced cellular regeneration, increased neural plasticity, and quantum coherence that defies our current understanding of biology. But there are risks, Jerk pointed out from the Lumerian side, though his former hostility had been tempered by witnessing the benefits of the transformation. Some who attempt the bond are rejected, others can't handle the neural strain. Show them, Thuron's thoughts prompted gently. Senna nodded and activated the holographic display they'd prepared. The chamber filled with swirling patterns of light, a visual representation of Lumeria's neural network as it now existed. Human settlement systems pulsed in harmony with Lumerian crystal matrices, creating unprecedented synergies of technology and biology. This is no longer about individual bonds, Senna explained. The entire planet is evolving, becoming a template for what our species can achieve together. The ancient Lumerians who left the prophecies understood that isolation leads to stagnation. They knew that true growth requires the courage to transform. Through their connection, she and Thuron initiated a deeper link with the crystal matrix, allowing everyone in the chamber to briefly experience the planet's new song. The melody carried echoes of human determination and Lumerian wisdom, but also something entirely new, a harmony that spoke of unlimited potential. When the demonstration ended, the chamber was silent for a long moment. Then the high scholar of Lumeria rose, her ancient features illuminated by the crystal light. The prophecies say this is only the beginning, that Lumeria will become a beacon, calling other worlds to join in the symphony of consciousness. A blueprint for the galaxy's future, Thuron added, but only if we choose to embrace it together. The debate raged for hours, but through their bond, Senna and Thuron could feel the tide turning. Fear and resistance gradually gave way to curiosity and hope as more leaders experienced the possibilities firsthand through brief neural connections. Finally, as Lumeria's twin suns set, a consensus was reached. The transformation would not be fought. Instead, both species would work together to understand and guide it, establishing protocols for those who wished to attempt bonding while respecting the choice of those who didn't. As the council dispersed, Senna and Thuron stood in the crystal garden outside the chamber, their consciousness more perfectly merged than ever before. Around them, the transformed forest sparkled with possibilities, each crystal holding the potential for new connections, new understandings, new ways of being. We'll need to establish training programs, Senna thought, her scientific mind already working on protocols to help future bonded pairs. And update the archives to document this new chapter in our shared history, Thuron added, his thoughts warm with optimism. Their bond hummed with shared purpose as they watched the first stars appear above Lumeria's crystalline spires. The planet's song had changed forever, transformed from separate melodies into a grand symphony of unity. Through their connection, they could feel the future taking shape, not just for themselves or their peoples, but for all those who would follow the beacon of their transformed world. As if in response to their thoughts, the crystal forest erupted in a cascade of light, each spire picking up and amplifying the harmony of consciousness that now bound human and Lumerian together. It was a promise written in stardust and sealed in the quantum hearts of two species becoming one, a promise that boundaries were meant to be transcended, that evolution required courage, and that love in all its forms was the most powerful force for transformation in the universe. The story of Lumeria's great synthesis was just beginning, but through their bond, Senna and Thuron knew with unshakable certainty that they would face whatever came next together, their linked consciousness a living bridge between what was and what could be. And in the endless dance of stars above, new worlds waited to hear Lumeria's song.